This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here's the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And good evening. It is true, this is A Different Perspective, and I am Kevin Randle, believe it or not. I am joined tonight by one of the guys considered the UFO historian. I think of him, I think of Jerry Clark, I think of Jan Aldridge as sort of the historians of the field collecting a great deal of information. So we've got Barry Greenwood, and we'll chat with him in just a second. I'll let you know that he has pursued the topic since 1964. He has served as an investigator and a state section director for the Massachusetts MUFON for about 10 years. He specializes in researching government documents in the late 1970s, which led to the 1984 publication of Clear Intent, which is a book that he wrote with Larry Fawcett. He's edited the newsletter Just Cause for Citizens Against UFO Secrecy from 1984 to 1998, and much of his research has been published in the MUFON UFO Journal, Flying Saucer Revue, and a variety of international publications since the mid-1970s. In more recent years, he has specialized in UFO history, and that's what we'll be talking about tonight, or in a few minutes here, compiling the New England Airship Wave of 1909 and editing U.F.O. Historical Review, which is a newsletter he began in 1998. He has published the online Union Catalog of Periodic UFO articles. It's a massive listing of UFO articles published worldwide in periodical literature, which would be, of course, magazines and the like. He is an associate of Project 1947 and the Sign Historical Group, and oversees the massive archives of historical UFO materials. He has held memberships in the American Astronomical Society, American Association for the Advancement of Science, and continues membership as a fellow of the British Interplanetary Society. He believes that the UFO controversy is a topic that deserves continued monitoring and investigation in the event that one or more of the incidents reported may exhibit provable signs of a previously unknown phenomenon. Many of the UFO incidences on record are often highly unusual and difficult to explain, but do not provide proof of extraterrestrial or otherwise exotic origins that are commonly expressed in popular media. It is urgent that the immediate attention be given to both preserving the existing records and duplicating those records into other forms for future dissemination and study in the event that important elements of the information may contribute to a solution or solutions to the more mysterious incidents. That is my long-winded introduction to Barry Greenwood, and I will say now, welcome, Barry Greenwood.
Yes, I'm here. That sounds like where I'm coming from.
Is there something you'd like to add, some additional books or articles you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't think so. They're all out there somewhere. They can be found eventually.
And your website is www.greenwoodufoarchive.com.
Yeah, it's basically an inventory of UFO materials that I usually keep around here. The ones I don't have, I'm trying to track down. So it's a resource. I try to consider it like a library where I can be asked about something and locate it quickly and get it out there.
And I guess you're involved with www.project1947.com.
Yes, since about 1995 or so when it first started.
So a lot of the material that you found, we can find online if we have additional questions about what we discussed tonight.
Yes, the inventories catalog what I've collected here. Now, a lot of it I can't post because of copyright law. You have to be careful of that. But if I receive simple requests for information, I can usually comply with them. And if it's something I don't have, I may know someone else that has it or eventually track it down through other sources. So I want the information on the subject to be accessible.
Well, and I mean, that's the worthy goal. I used to like to brag that I had a complete set of the Project Blue Book files on microfilm that I'd collected over the years, and realized that Fold 3 has pretty well mitigated that exclusivity that I had.
They have to a point because sometimes it's hard to use as an interface. You put information in requesting certain case files and all. They don't turn up very easily. You have to dig very deeply sometimes into the site. It's great that they're up. They have very good resolution images of the files, and they can be reproduced very well for personal use. But
Let me interrupt here because we're getting right up against the break, and we're going to have to take that break here in just a moment. For more information, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and we will return right after this.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere, Florida. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine such as hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining rooms can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you visit, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic downtown Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, Old Florida cuisine at its best.
If you're a seeker, don't miss the inspiring book Shamanic Awakening, Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Cochran's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers throughout the Americas. Sandy's initiations across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt, combined with her knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth, influence her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private readings, sacred international journeys, a meditative CD, and her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate your earth walk and create a deeper connection to yourself. Find this and more at her website, starwalkervisions.com.
And as promised, I have returned with Barry Greenwood. When I so rudely interrupted him, we were talking about the Fold Free website that has a great deal of the Project Blue Book information online. And I know, Barry, you had a couple of comments about that, and I wondered if we had finished with that, or did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a bit more. As I said, Fold 3 is a great site and all, but there are things missing there. There's another site called the Blue Book Archives, which contains essentially the same materials, but only up to about 56 rather. And that's a little bit easier to use to find things, but like I said, it cuts off at 56. They couldn't complete the project for lack of funds, and it's there for use with any older materials. But Fold 3 you can use for later things. And you mentioned there are microfilms out there. If people want copies of any of these things, they can, get microfilm or download them. I have a copy of the entire Blue Book holding on my disk, so it's all there, and I can pull it when I need it.
I just have the microfilm, so that gets a little cumbersome trying to sort through those. The Blue Book Archives is a real easy site to use. I will agree with you. On Fold 3, you kind of have to hunt around for stuff, so it's more complicated. But you can usually get what you're looking for. Yeah,
it's laid out. You can locate things by frame numbers and all, but of course you need to know what you're looking for first to make use of that. So, while the film's on there, it's broken up into categories, and that's what makes it difficult to use. There are lists of sightings for each month of each year that Blue Book covered, but as I said, it doesn't include everything. There's some sightings that just aren't there at all, and you have to dig.
Okay, I think we've disposed with that.
Right.
I'm gonna jump ahead here now to something I was actually going to hold till later, but we'll get into it now to dispose of it properly. Last week we talked to Colonel Charles Halt about the Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters incident of December 1980. And in the course of that, of course, what I was trying to discover was somebody had said, and it may have been on my blog, it may have been something else, but somebody said to me that had it not been for Larry Warren, we would not have known about the Rendlesham Forest case. And it seemed to me that the researchers in Great Britain had actually kind of broken the case before it got over here, and that Larry Warren was the one that approached you and Larry Fawcett about that. And so I thought we'd kind of talk about that. That is true. Larry Fawcett Larry Warren did contact you, didn't he?
Yes. He attended a lecture by Larry Fawcett in Connecticut years ago, and after he listened to Larry's talk, he went up to him and told him this story. Larry Fawcett contacted me by phone and told me what Warren said. And Larry didn't know anything about the case. He never had heard of Bentwaters and all until Warren mentioned it. And I told Larry that I had heard of it, but only in rumor form. I think there were some articles, or at least one article in the British publication Flying Saucer Revue, that had mentioned these stories about sightings at the airbase and some odd stuff going on, but they didn't have a whole lot of detail about them.
Which, if I can break in here, will kind of confirm what Halt had said last week, that some of the stuff had gotten out in Great Britain, but the information wasn't completely accurate, but they had kind of the essence of the story. So this predates Larry Warren approaching Larry Fawcett.
Yes, it does.
And you'd heard about this stuff prior to Larry Warren approaching Larry Fawcett.
I had heard about it via those sources that Halt's alluding to, probably around 1981 when the rumors were published. And so I was aware that something happened there, but when Larry told me about Warren's comments, it rang true, and I figured we had someone who was either there or was close to people who were there. So we arranged to speak to Warren in more detail. And he told this long story about sightings over the base and a trip into the woods by Colonel Halt and some of his men. Larry said he was part of it. And he went into detail. He didn't have any paperwork or anything about the story. It was just his knowledge of having been exposed to that information. So it's true that if it wasn't for Larry Warren, we wouldn't know about the story. He was really the first one that gave us concrete details that we could act upon. So what I did was I called a friend of mine, Bob Todd, who was a well-renowned Freedom of Information Act researcher on UFOs. He had been doing it since 1976, and we had thousands of pages released over the years with the help of Bob and other people. So
well, I'll break in here right here and say Bob Todd is was somewhat curmudgeonly, to be kind about it, but he was death on FOIA requests. He would get stuff that nobody else seemed to be able to get. So he was extremely well versed in how to operate that system. And I think we learned about Project Moondust, which was a wider UFO investigation that was going on through information that Bob Todd originally found. So we do owe him a debt for that reason.
Yes, well, the curmudgeonliness of Bob, I think, was largely due to his impatience with how the UFO field had behaved over the years. He didn't like uncritical belief in the subject. He believed in documenting things. And he had a short temper for the common thread in the subject that aliens were here from other planets or wherever, and it was those ideas were treated as uncritical truth. And Bob felt there wasn't that kind of evidence, but he thought digging into government files to verify some of the secrecy and conspiracy ideas would be very helpful, and the FOIA allowed him to do that, along with everybody else that used it. So you were contacting him about the Bentwaters case, and he was doing his thing, looking for documentation. Yeah, what I did was I explained the detail that Warren gave us, and he went ahead and filed FOIA requests for any paperwork. And a short time later, he'd received a response from the Air Force, which included a document, which is now known as the Halt Memo, officially discussing this whole thing. And it wasn't in extreme detail. It was only one page or so. But it gave enough for us to really do a follow-up, because here we had an Air Force document signed by a witness who was in the Air Force at the time. And the odd way the document turned up was the Air Force didn't have it in their files. They went to the Ministry of Defense in Britain to get a copy back of what was submitted to them by Colonel Halt from the base. I thought that was really strange, because there was no requirement of the government to go pursue records that were out of their hands. But that's what they did, and apparently someone felt that we should see this information, and it was released. So Bob sent it along. And I looked at it and showed Larry, and I said, wow, I think we have something here. So,
and by Larry, you mean Larry Fawcett?
Larry Fawcett, yeah.
Too many Larrys in the program here.
Yeah, too many. So Warren's story had some credibility to it. But as he continued on, after we had the Halt Memo and all that, we sent it over to England to help the researchers there, and that turned into another ugly story, but I won't touch that right now. Warren expanded on the details of his involvement, and it went into things about underground bases and seeing aliens behind screens talking about their origins and all. I'm listening to this, and I'm saying that's really strange stuff. And I didn't expect that kind of detail out of Larry, because it didn't sound like the story went that far, even with the rumors. But
well, when he was talking about underground bases, he meant underground bases under Bentwaters
yes,
in that area,
right,
not the stories that we get in the United States now about all these
No, this was
underground
England.
bases. This is an underground base under Bentwaters.
This was at Bentwaters, right? He was saying that there was a secret facility there that he was brought into, and he felt he was drugged too. He said he was drugged at the time, which was, I think, part of the conspiracy meme. Anyway, but he told us that story, and then I'm trying to verify any of that from folks in England and all, and I wasn't hearing that. And a short time later, Larry had called me one night on the phone. I had worked a night shift, and I got home about 11:30 or so. So this is really late at night, and he gives me a buzz and says he wanted to tell me something. He had to own up to a problem, and that was that that part of the story where he said he was brought underground and saw this lurid detail about alien contact was not his story. It was the story that a friend of his in the security police at the time, Adrian Bustinzer, had told him. That was his experience, not Larry Warren's experience. So I said, we were investigating this case, and here the main witness essentially falsified detail. And
but he did come clean.
He came clean, yeah, and I don't quite know why. I mean, I knew no better whether that was true or not about him, but he came clean on it and said that wasn't so. Maybe he felt that we were doing a lot of checking, and we would go down dead ends using that detail that he was giving us. His story was that Bustinza was not willing to tell the story, and Larry was adopting Bustinza's story in an effort to flush out Bustinza. In other words, if Larry gave the details of this out, Bustinza would feel like, well, it's out in the open now, so I'll tell the story as it happened to me. Well, he didn't do that. He stayed quiet. So Larry was dangling in the wind with this fake story. Fake as to being his story. So I said, that's a real problem, Larry. I said, it's going to have to be a lot of explaining to do. But, it kind of blew up on him at the time. People found out about it. And then there was another incident involving the Halt memo, which I mentioned earlier, that we'd sent it over to England with the hope to get people to talk, open up new channels of documentation. And we discovered later that the British investigators had taken the document along with the story and had gone to the British News of the World newspaper. It was a very lurid tabloid, and gave them the front page coverage on it, and they were paid a large sum of money.
Well, let's just the newspaper, the tabloid in England was not quite at the level of the National Enquirer. It was a little bit better than that.
Yeah, it was better than the Enquirer, but much less than the New York Times. Let's put it that way.
It wasn't a really credible source, but it was more credible than the National Enquirer.
It was probably on the level of a lot of gossip publications today.
Okay. That was their forte, was the gossip publications.
Yeah, but, they were looking for sensation, and the Bentwater story was certainly a sensation. And with that document to back it up, they thought it was great, so they put it on the front page. And the investigators.
We will come back to that in just a few moments here. We've got to take another break, try to remember where we are, and it resonates with something that Halt said last week as well, that we can tie that all right together. As I say, you can take a look for more information about this sort of thing at www.greenwoodufoarchive.com, and I always put something up about the stories that we cover at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. So it sometimes provides you links to other information that will help you understand exactly what we're talking about. And in the interest of self-promotion, be sure to take a look at Roswell in the 21st Century, which will give you an idea of where we stand on Roswell. We will be back right after this, so please stick around.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
There's a legend shared by many indigenous cultures of a time when the nations were cast to the four corners of the world. Each nation was given a body of sacred knowledge that held a different portion of the truth to preserve. True reality could not be known until all the nations reunited, combining the information. If a single one was missing, the world could not be reborn and darkness would prevail. The Science of Magic Radio is dedicated to reuniting the sacred knowledge. With the understanding, none of us has all the answers, but together we can open new perceptions and possibilities. Through our combined vision, the world can be reborn into a place where darkness no longer prevails. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, or visit us at thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
And as I promised just moments ago, we are back with Barry Greenwood. We were talking about Bentwaters, and we're getting a little bit deeper into this thing than we'd actually planned on doing. One of the things I was going to say that you brought up, that the Holt memo had gotten back to England and got in the hands of the newspaper. And what Holt said last week that I found kind of funny was he got a call that there were some reporters at the front gate, and he said, hold them up there. And he went and pulled his information packet from the PAO, so that when they went to the PAO for pictures and things like that, they couldn't find anything on Holt and had to take the next higher level guy to put his picture in the newspaper, which I guess didn't win him many friends, but I thought it was kind of a clever move on his part. So we have the Holt memo back in the hands of British UFO researchers. It's published in the newspaper, and it's caused some additional trouble because of that.
Right. Being in a tabloid newspaper, that was the last thing I really wanted to have happen, because I thought the story, in spite of the problems with Larry Warren telling a different tale than he should have, I felt the entire story had some credibility to it and needed to be followed upon. And getting it into a tabloid paper first was just about the worst thing that could happen, and especially since the investigators had been paid good money for that story and never even told Larry Fawcett and myself that they were doing that. So I felt at that point that the whole thing was out of control, and I don't know where it was going to go, but I told Larry on the phone that I couldn't
Larry
Fawcett, yeah. And I told him that I couldn't continue with the story because, number one, our main witness falsified information. Number two, the British investigators had undermined us on that by selling it off the way they did. So I was out of it by then. I just closed it up and let someone else take care of it. I tried, but there were just too many problems with the credibility.
Well, but you're not saying that the story itself is untrue. You're just saying that...
No, I'm not saying the story was true, but the way the story had opened up, it just went completely off track from what we wanted to do.
So you haven't been involved in any of the more recent activities around Bentwaters?
Very recent things, yes, because apparently there's another development on Bentwaters where Larry Warren had claimed that there was a photograph that he had taken around that time in 1980 of an A-10 aircraft during broad daylight that seemed to have a UFO hovering over it. And I didn't know about the level of controversy over that in Britain. I don't follow current media on the subject too much. I'm still old-fashioned. I deal with photocopies and old ways of doing things, but I was advised by several people in England about all of this with the A-10 photo, and one of them, Sasha Christie, had sent me a copy to show me what it was, and I looked at it and I said, well, I know the photo, but I don't know that UFO. So I went digging through my files, and I found that it was the same photo that Larry Warren had given me, along with a group of about 20 others, that he had taken during his honeymoon in England in 1985. When he returned, we were still dealing with him and all, and the newspaper thing hadn't come up yet. And he handed us these pictures and said, he took these while he was sightseeing in the forest in the areas near the base. The base was still active. And he took a bunch of snapshots of where he thought some of the big events had happened. And his new wife was in one of the pictures and all. So I looked at him and all. He had this picture of a helicopter and an A-10. But when I looked at the honeymoon pictures, there was no UFO in it. I said, gee, that's odd. Why is it going around now with a UFO? So I sent the pictures over to England and said, look, this is the copy he gave me. And as you can see, there's no flying saucer there. And there's absolutely no evidence that the photo was doctored. The photos are legitimate. Those are the ones he handed to me, and they weren't tampered with. There's nothing there to talk about. It's no UFO. So I guess now it's exploded in England that, the photos were faked and people defending Larry, trying to find ways to explain it. And people against Larry Warren, they're using it to crucify him.
Well, I think we've kind of disposed of Bentwaters here. I just wanted to get your take on it because of some of the things that Colonel Halt had said last week, and you being sort of a neutral source on all of this, and it kind of gives a better perspective, or a different perspective, if you will, on that sort of thing. When we look back at the UFO field, and you do the history, as you say, and you're really interested in the older cases. Is there one of the older cases that really kind of fires your imagination that thinks, had things been a little bit different, we might have had evidence of extraterrestrial visitation or something that just really captures your imagination?
As far as hard evidence, no, I really haven't seen anything like that. I know that there were credible stories about CE2s, meaning close encounters where physical evidence is left behind in the form of tree branches broken, grass matted down and burned, and an assortment of assumed artifacts from UFOs. But I'm not convinced any of those qualify as proof. It's all circumstantial. And crash saucers, I think, you've known over the years that I'm pretty hard on crash disc cases, you being the Roswell guy and all. I try to be very, very demanding on information like that. And before I'll go out and say that a report like that is true, because if I do, then people are going to look at me and say, well, where's your proof? And it's hard to produce proof on UFOs. You can argue with very compelling information that people report and hopefully have multiple witnesses and all, but you just can't give them something and put it in their hands and have them put it under a microscope and analyze it and be conclusive about it. That's why the subject is still called unidentified. They haven't been identified. But
are there cases that excite you?
I've always liked the Levelland, Texas story. Multiple witnesses.
Let me break in here and say, yeah, because I'm a fan of that case as well, and we'll let you explain what's going on there. But I would like to just say, yes, that's a very, very good case.
Right. It was a series of incidents, about 8 or 10 or so, maybe more, of people in the Levelland area in different areas of the city reporting seeing anything from a basketball-sized ball of light to an object that was about 200 feet long and shaped like an egg appearing. And in many cases, the object's appearance was followed by people's vehicles, cars or trucks they were in, stalling and losing their power. And it was widely reported at the time. If you look at the press from Levelland, even outside of the area, they'll discuss this car stalling problem that they had with all the sightings. And it alarmed the Air Force enough to look into it. Life magazine went down there and took pictures of some of the witnesses and all. They never published the story, which was very disappointing. But there is a Life magazine photo archive you can go to and look up some of those pictures that they never published, and they're really interesting. But the Air Force ultimately had concluded that it was this was a rare natural phenomenon that had appeared in the city, and it was generated due to storms in the area at the time. They called it ball lightning. Now, ball lightning, to this day, is still debatable, but I think many scientists accept it as true. It's just that you can't capture something like that easily and do analysis on it. The nature of the reports on it are just, they come and go, and the thing that's very credible about them is that there's a lot of consistency with the way people report them. So the Air Force invoked that as an explanation for Levelland, but I had never heard of ball lightning being 200 feet long or wide or tall.
I would say ball lightning, when it is observed, is very short-lived. It's very small, and sometimes kind of explodes. I mean, disappears with a pop and that kind of thing. And in 1957, the scientific community thought of ball lightning kind of in the same terms as UFOs, and I thought it was sort of silly that the Air Force is explaining one unidentified phenomenon with another unidentified.
Right. I thought that was very strange. The Air Force had concluded in 1969 that there was nothing to investigate, and they felt the so-called Condon Committee, which was their attempt to put the subject to bed, had concluded there was nothing scientific to be learned from the phenomenon. Yet they're talking about ball lightning, which to me is something that science has taken great interest in and had concluded that there was a lot to learn from something like that. There are many scientific papers about it that can be consulted.
Well, I was going to say also that the Condon Committee, of course, is the University of Colorado study commissioned by the Air Force so they could end Project Blue Book. But they solved one of the sightings in their report as a natural phenomenon so rare it had never been seen before or since.
Right.
And I'm thinking if that's the actual conclusion, there is something of scientific value to be learned by this extremely rare scientific or this natural phenomenon, and they just kind of blew the whole thing off.
Yes, the problem was the elusiveness of the ball lightning reports. Reports had continued for years later. I had received news clippings about incidents in Massachusetts, where I live, describing people seeing these odd balls of light that suddenly appeared. There was one report in Quincy, Mass, where a person had pulled into a driveway, and they looked and saw this funny ball of light off to the side of the car after they had parked it, and it moved up around the front of the car and over to the driver's side, where it suddenly exploded. But it had performed, seemingly anyway, intelligent movement by following the contour of the car before it exploded. Now, you might infer there's something electrical interacting with the body of the metal car and all, but the point is that story followed consistently with many other reports of a very rare phenomenon, and a lot of people would call it a UFO-type phenomenon. And it was credible. I saw other reports after that from many, many other areas. I went through weather publications going back 100 years finding these things. So for the Air Force to invoke something like that as an explanation is astonishing. That alone should have convinced someone to keep the project going, to monitor things like that.
But you can argue that that's really not an Air Force function.
It's not their function, right? But they had received military reports too, like that.
But I'm still they're not in the business of understanding ball lightning. They're in the business of protection of the United States and that sort of thing. And these sorts of things do not threaten national security, which was the big thing in the Condon Committee. There's no threat to national security that allowed them to punch out of that. This is my long-winded way of getting to the point where I can now say we're going to have to take another short break here. I will return with Barry Greenwood, and we'll talk a little bit more about Levelland, maybe get into some of the specifics of that case in our last segment. And for those of you who are interested, you can take a look at www.greenwoodufoarchive.com or take a look at www.project1947.com, and you can learn some more about that. And as I say repeatedly, more information will appear about this and a link to this program again at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. We'll return right after this.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? I'm Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, and on The Secret to Everything, we will merge the practical with open investigation into all realms of the mysterious. We will talk to cutting-edge alternative health practitioners, those who inspire and motivate you in business and life, and of course, we will share stories of the paranormal, conspiracy, and cryptozoology. You will transform because of the frequency I carry, the frequencies my guests carry. Life may never be the same after you listen to this program, for the secret to everything is for you, the listener, for those who desire more in every area of their lives and believe that it can still be found. Listen and discover thesecrettoeverything.com.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
And we are back with my guest, Barry Greenwood, who is one of the major historians of the UFO field. We were talking about the level land sightings, and we did a little bit of discussion of ball lightning, which is kind of a related subject because some people have seen ball lightning and thought of it as UFOs, and some of the ball lightning reports that I've found actually go back literally hundreds of years, and it's clearly what they're describing is ball lightning as we understand it in today's world. But we were kind of talking about the level land sightings, which clearly were not ball lightning. I think there's some dispute whether there actually was weather phenomenon, weather storms in the area at the time of the sightings. I think the Air Force kind of glommed onto some things to suggest that. But we had stories of craft on the ground, craft interacting with the environment, meaning installing car engines, dimming lights, filling radios with static. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word radio right there. With static. But the Air Force had said there were only 3 witnesses. Don Kehoe said there were 9. And if you go through the Project Blue Book files extensively and keep score, there were at least 13 people who were involved in this in 13 separate locations all around the level land area and in small towns right near there. And for those who are unfamiliar with Texas, level land is right now near Lubbock, so you can get an idea of the location of level land and all of that. So you are a proponent. You are excited about the level land sightings as something anomalous.
Right. Now, I had mentioned that the Air Force invoked the ball lightning explanation, but also that there were aspects of the Levelland reports that couldn't be ball lightning, in my opinion. For example, one of the motorists that was stopped, a fellow named Jim Wheeler, he was on a road about 4 miles or so east of Levelland, and he said this object, brilliantly lit, shaped like an egg, 200 feet long, settled down near the road, and it blocked his path. And while it was sitting there, his truck died as he got out to take a closer look. The object very soon after that took off, and its lights went out, the object's lights, and as it moved away, Wheeler's car started up again and worked normally.
Well, there's a question that come up, and I've actually gone through Mark Rodiger's big study of these car stallings, and the question becomes: does the car start again spontaneously, or is the driver merely able to start it again now that the object is gone?
Well, that's the thing that you need in these stories is a lot more detail. Sometimes those details are left out in the retelling of them. So apparently some of the reports had the cars starting on their own.
I think if you read the way the things are written and the way they're talked about, it's really not clear.
Right.
And some of them, the car started, and you're thinking, did the driver now have to start the car, or did it start spontaneously? And I looked through a lot of these sightings specifically for that thing, and very few of them actually say the car started spontaneously. Usually it's something, well, the car started again, or I was able to drive away. So there's really not that one little critical detail, but it sounds like they had to make some kind of effort to start the car. And I bring this up simply because in the Condon report, the big document about this, they don't really do much with this. They don't mention level land except in passing. And they had one report that went to them from a woman who had her car stalled and said that she started it. And they went to investigate that, and they could find no kind of a magnetic phenomenon that would suppress the car engine. And then when you removed that force, it would start spontaneously. Somebody had to do something to start it. That was kind of what keyed my interest in that sort of thing and looking into that. So I just offer that out as one of my observations.
No, that's a good point, because I think UFO investigation at that time, it was only 10 years after it became a subject at all. The organizations were in their infancy, and everybody was trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I investigate this subject? And often when they did investigate, important details were left out, misinterpretations crept into the report. So, yeah, you have to look at all of these very carefully. Sometimes the detail is just too fuzzy. So you can't be absolute.
Well, the other thing that struck me about this whole sort of thing is, says talking about it being in the infancy. At this point, 1957, the Project Blue Book had become pretty rabidly extraterrestrial, anti-saucer, that this was nothing that the Air Force should be involved in. And they went out of their way to supply answers, even if the answers made no sense, as long as we can solve the case. And they looked for those sorts of things. The Air Force investigation of this case, which should have taken several weeks, took most of an afternoon. And it was an NCO that came from Reese Air Force Base, which is in Lubbock, right, located next to Levelland. And he talked to 2 or 3 people, and that was really all they did. The real problem was that NICAP was in a fight with the Air Force over congressional hearings and getting congressional hearings. And so they were so busy arguing over the number of witnesses and that sort of thing, nobody was doing any investigation.
Yeah. Air Force wanted the subject off their desk very quickly. And as reports came in, they'd give passing attention to them, send investigators out sometimes, collect details, and then file them and put them away. There was not much interest in scientific investigation. They, as you said, their purpose was national security, Was there any threat to the government or people in the area? If not, they just file them.
And the thing that always struck me about this sort of thing is we look at the investigation as supposedly being neutral, but they're really not quite neutral. They're
no.
And the argument between the private UFO organizations and the Air Force was getting in the way of the investigations. They were too busy arguing over trivial details like, well, there were only 3 witnesses. No, there were 9 witnesses, to really look at the thing and understand what was going on. And Level Land kind of brings all of that together. You've got multiple witnesses, as you mentioned, in multiple locations reporting the thing to the law enforcement in the area independently of one another. It's the next day you get a couple of additional reports after they realize they've seen something unusual. One of the things, and I'm going to bring this up because I'm going to try to put up, I took pictures on some of the locations where the sightings took place in the Levelland area in the last 3 or 4 years. And if I can find the pictures, my hard drive crashed and I lost some of this stuff, but I can find those pictures. I'll put them up on the blog so you can at least see the areas where the events took place in the Levelland, Texas area.
Yeah.
Is there another sighting like that kind of excites you? Because we've only got a couple of minutes left here, and we'll see if we can get something else going.
Besides Levelland, I thought, and this is clearly alluding to what I wrote, the 1975 overflights of military bases along the U.S.-Canadian border was rather remarkable. I wouldn't say the individual reports were on a par with what happened at a place like Levelland, but you had a collective invasion by something along these bases during a very short period of time, and it always baffled me what was going on then. Even if you didn't consider these things flying over the bases were UFOs, what was going on? What was all this activity suddenly where it was felt necessary to intrude on these bases and take a risk of getting shot at or taken down and all? The incidents at Loring Air Force Base, for example, in late October involved helicopter.
Late October
of 75.
1975,
okay. Yeah. And there were flyovers of nuclear bomb igloos on the base. They were very alarmed by this. The objects never did anything, but I remember one of the commanders at Loring had said that they had the thought of putting searchlights on these objects to get a better look, but they thought against it because they feared of blinding whoever was flying these things, and they'd nosedive into the bomb igloos and cause problems.
Were they ever able to identify who the intruders were?
The government, no. Apparently the Loring objects had sped off into Canada, and in at least one case they were pursued by a helicopter, and nothing was found. They disappeared into Canada somewhere, and whether the Canadians had picked them up or not on their own detection equipment is unknown. Nothing's been released like that. There's been no overarching explanation by the military as to what went on during this time. There were more than one base.
Didn't they talk, in the Loring case specifically, talk about unidentified helicopters?
Yes. Those were the main reports from Loring. In other places, there were lights, formations of lights, structured objects seen. It involved Wart Smith Air Force Base in Michigan, Malmstrom in Montana. There were reports from Plattsburgh Air Force Base, which I've never been able to get any paperwork on, but there were strong stories about intrusions there too. So, and this was all happening within about a 3-week time frame. And after that, it just died, except for other isolated incidents here and there. But it wasn't concentrated and organized in these other locations. The Northern Tier was just a focus of some attention that was rather inexplicable to me. And it's still, to me, it's still a major event that should be fleshed out more by government sources. Let us know what happened here, because these intrusions went on without any interference. It was with impunity.
Well, Barry, I got to say, and thank you for showing up today on the program. We're out of time, and there's, so much more that I'd like to ask you and talk to you about, so we'll probably have to drag you back to this at some point in the future. Your website is www.greenwoodufoarchives.com, and you can find information at www.project1947.com. And I will try to get stuff up about some of the things that Barry and I have talked about today at the blog spot, at my blog, www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And we will return next week with some of the people at the University of Texas to talk about the Ramey memo and what's going on with that. So we will be back with that show next week. Thank you for listening, and that is it.